Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a great conference, and thank you for joining us for the presentation, Expanding the Library's Responsibilities at a Land-Grant Institution, led by Hillary Fox and Tisha Mentnech of North Carolina State University. The session is being recorded and live captioning is enabled. You can hide captions by choosing Hide Subtitle on the live transcript menu at the bottom of the screen. Feel free to submit your questions in the chat, and we will get to as many of them as we can during the Q&A. Take it away, Maria and Tisha.
Hey y'all, I'm out right at my screen real quickly. Okay, so today Hillary and I are going to talk about our work and how it was affected during COVID, as well as our work with Extension and how their work was. So today we're going to talk about expanding the responsibilities at the library's responsibilities at a land-grant institution. So before we begin, we want to introduce ourselves. I'm Tisha Mentnech. I'm one of the research librarians here at NC State, and I support the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences.
Hey everyone, my name is Hillary Fox, and I'm another research librarian for Agricultural and Environmental Sciences.
Before we get started, we do want to do our land acknowledgement. I'm not going to read what's on the screen. I'm just going to say that NC State is a land-grant institution. So what that means is we were given land through the U.S. government's Morrill Act. And what this means is that we directly benefit from stolen land at NC State, as well as within the extension program, which covers the entire state. And so what this means is we need to be cognizant of the work we're doing and focusing on decolonization and the ways in which white supremacy has affected these communities. And so as we go forward, this is something that Hillary and I think about with our work, as well as how we can properly support the community and give back anything that we're able to do. So our work is we're tackling the challenges that Cooperative Extension faced during COVID-19 and the pandemic and how the library responded. And so just a little bit about what Extension is. Cooperative Extension is a program that is for the entire state of North Carolina. It is served from NC State as well as the NC-A&T. There are 101 extension stations across the state. There's one in every county, so that's 100 counties, as well as one on the eastern band of the Cherokee Reservation that's located in Swain County. And so Extension has 5 areas that it serves. It's food and agriculture, natural resources, health and nutrition, 4-H youth development, and families and communities. And so some of the ways that Extension works for you all as well for the state is they tailor gardening and food production programs within rural and urban areas. They've also been able to educate over 1 million rural North Carolinians, most of whom live in a tier 1 or tier 2 county, which is determined by the average population density of 250 people or less per square mile. They've also trained 30 National Park Service staff in climate adaptation and planning frameworks for archaeological stewardship, as well as using that framework to enhance the value considerations of the associated American Indian tribes across the state. And so a little bit about Hillary and I's work. We're both fairly new to NC State. I've been here almost a year or 2 years, and Hillary's almost at a year and a half. And as we were getting accustomed in our roles and learning about what we could do for the colleges we serve, we had noticed that not a lot of outreach had been done through the Cooperative Extension at NC State. And so what we wanted to do was find a way to connect the needs of Cooperative Extension personnel. So this could be people who are research faculty, teaching faculty, field agents, which are employed half by the NC State system as well as by the county, and then their volunteers. So this is a large swath of people. NC State serves about 1,200 of them, and then we also have the faculty and staff within NC-A&T. And so through some research, we were able to find out that not a lot of our colleagues within these programs had much access to our resources. They didn't know what resources they had. Other ag and life science librarians had done a similar study and seeing that they're just unaware of the collections because of that disconnect between what Cooperative Extension does and what the library does and who we actually serve as our stakeholders. And so we have been working on a study through surveys and interviews, and we're working closely with different Cooperative Extension groups. We actually just left a horticulture agent webinar, which is really helpful and fun, to really find ways to better connect what the library does to Extension so we can benefit them.
Great, thank you, Tisha. So now I'm going to get into some of the case studies of information that we have learned, where we got to see or rather we got to hear about the issues that Extension was facing, and then also identified opportunities where the library could assist. So it probably goes without saying, but Extension was no exception to feeling the impacts of the pandemic. But from the challenges they faced, there are also numerous cases of resilience and successes. And through these challenges, like I just mentioned, there were also opportunities for the library to collaborate and to help the specialists and the agents and the researchers continue their work. So while I'm going to go over some specific case studies, these reflect issues and opportunities among specific Extension specialists, but you can also think about how these reflect what's happening in other units of Extension. So we noticed a lot of crossover in these issues. If you serve a population that falls outside of the traditional academic work at university libraries, you likely have experienced something similar. So maybe some of these suggestions can either inspire you, or perhaps we can get a conversation going on other ways that you've helped what might be called an untraditional population. All right, so first was with the 4-H camps going virtual. So 4-H, they host camps that impact thousands upon thousands of youth over the summer. And as we all remember, everything had to move virtually very quickly back in March of 2020. And with 4-H specifically, this left some big questions, like how do we translate our typical activities so that they can still be educational over Zoom? How do we make what were once hands-on activities still engaging? Because they did a lot around camping, around gardening and plants, around animals, and using sporting equipment. And then another big question was, how will parents and children feel about these virtual camps? Will they still be happy with what we've done? So with our solution, the library helped address some of these questions through a few ways. First, we were invited to present and create an interactive experience at some of the camps, such as the Poultry Summer Science Institute, where we basically went over basic internet searching skills, how to evaluate resources, and also we ended all up with a competitive scavenger hunt related to turkeys. And by doing outreach like this was nice because we were able to give a shout out to resources that the youth may have more immediately available to them in their geographic area, or resources that they might be more familiar with, such as using their public library, which had likely also gone virtual, or using their school librarian to get assistance, which had also gone virtual. Another way we were able to help connect the summer camps to library services were with doing virtual tours of our Hunt Library, which is a really high-tech space. And I think a lot of people typically think of it as a maker space. And when you consider all of these different initiatives, this was nice because it gave high school students a glimpse at what college might be like if that was an option available to them after high school. And it also changed their perception on what librarians actually do. Okay, next slide, Tisha. Through the surveys and the interviews that we've done over the past year, one group that was particularly active with answering our research questions were horticulturalists. So after they learned about library services, essentially everyone in the horticulture areas, they indicated that agents needed help knowing how to search more effectively on Google, when and how to find evidence to support their decision making, who to contact from the library if they had questions, and what services are available. So we collaborated with them on different solutions to help with these questions. As some background, in the pre-pandemic, like a lot of us, Extension would have previously tried to host their events and trainings at the different Extension sites, which that can be problematic because not everybody would be able to attend, or not everybody would be able to travel, or maybe there was some other conflict. But once everything moved to a Zoom world, more people were able to be present at once, and we also had the option to record trainings. So this was really nice because people could still do those trainings at a later date. All of this was helpful to us because with us going virtual as well, us as in the library, we were able to reach more people during the training. So one of the ongoing things that we've done right now, specifically for horticulture agents as well as researchers, is we've developed a webinar series for every third week of the month where we address introduction to library services, how to research Google like a pro, and then also an Ask Me Anything library session where people can drop in like office hours and ask any questions about their work and how the library can help. Resource-wise, by talking to the horticulturalists, we got to hear more about what they needed, and then as a result, we're able to buy resources and electronic subscriptions to plant diseases and pest compendiums. And this is something that is sort of like an ebook that addresses specific crop needs and how to care for them, which is really important to the agents on the ground. We were also sorry, go back, Tisha, one more thing. Also, having these conversations were nice because we got to share with them that we could mail print copies of materials to them. And this was something that they weren't fully aware of, that was an available service to them. Okay, next, Tisha. All right, so by talking to these different agents and specialists, one of the things that nearly everyone suggested was that we get in touch with leadership within Extension, because the information that we were sharing about the libraries was, to paraphrase a quote, stuff that everybody should know. And while this work is ongoing, our hope is that by communicating with leadership, that the library information will trickle down from the top. A success story through some of these interviews was that we were able to connect with department extension leaders who are called DELs. And these are leaders for the individual campus departments who also liaise with agents and specialists on the ground. So far, we've presented on library services that may be helpful to Extension to the DELs. And we've made changes to library services as a response to talking to these agents. And we've also been able to provide a summary to the DEL leadership on the feedback that we've gotten from the agents. And this was really nice because it opened the door for other collaborations. So us talking to different county agent conferences or different North Carolina conferences that are specific to Extension. Okay, next, Tisha.
All right. And then just to wrap up, so the way that Hillary and I see ourselves for Extension is to work as a concierge. They have needs outside of the traditional research scope, and making sure that we can serve as a conduit for the types of work that they need, but also without having to overwhelm them. They're one of 1,200 people, and having to introduce them to then hundreds of library staff isn't always going to work. And so we're able to use that traditional liaison model to really help them understand what services that they have and to connect them so that way they're able to do their work without having to learn so much more stuff. And so some benefits from all of this is Hillary and I have really been able to have a broader reach. We've been able to meet with people from Onslow County, out from Wilmington, as well as people out in Buncombe County, which we wouldn't have been able to do otherwise within a day. We're able to then help everyone understand the virtual space that the library can be. We're also working to meet people where they are. We don't want to change the way that they do their work. We just want to make it more seamless as well as more strategic. So when they use Google, helping them use that in a way that can then provide the results without giving too much that they don't need. And then overall, using this as a framework for us to support, as well as you all could, support your satellite campuses and institutions. So that way, if you are with a community that is hours away from your campus or just a group you're not doing as much outreach with, this can be a way that you all could work with them as well. So these are questions. If you have them, here's where our slides are available. We'll have Hillary share those in the chat as well. And I think we're going to do questions now. I don't know how much time we have, though, so if we need to continue and skip that.
Oh, you're wonderful. You're right on time. Right on time. Thank you so much. Don't see coming up right now. I just wanted to make a comment that I'm so glad that you're doing this work and that you're sharing it with everyone. And I kind of do have a question about whether you have plans to make this presentation elsewhere, at other conferences, or how often do you speak on this? Because this is so important.
Yeah, we've talked about it at a couple of conferences, ones that are really targeted toward ag and life sciences librarianship. We did one earlier this year at TRLN. I'm not sure what the future holds for it, though, of what we're going to continue to talk about, but it's on the radar for us for sure.
If you know a place where we can bring this up, you can speak to our booking agent. No, we would be happy to, if you would help us make connections.
Yes, I will be thinking about that. It's a wonderful topic. Is there anything in particular about the work that you enjoy the most?
I think probably for us, it's just seeing how excited people are across the extension community to know that this is a resource that's available for them and sort of seeing that light bulb go off. I think really any librarian who engages with the public or students, when you're doing information literacy sessions, when you see them make that connection with what's available to them and they're like, I had no idea, this makes my life so much easier, and you sort of get that type of response, it's really invigorating and energizing. And every time Tisha and I have an interview or do a presentation with them, we walk out of there feeling really good and excited to continue working with them. Also, if they are on a farm, sometimes we get to see cute animals. We got to see chicks over the summer, which was really exciting. We even had that extension agent come to one of our departmental meetings to present about them.
Oh, that's great. Sounds like a nice perk. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I guess we can move on. But thank you so much for sharing your experience. It's just so wonderful to hear about what you're doing, and keep doing what you're doing. It's much needed. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
So we are going to move right on to our next presentation, which is Finding Our Way to a Virtual Gathering Space, What Crowdsourced Zines, VR, and Web Design Have in Common, led by Amanda Dahill-Moore, Cass Saroza, and Colin Keenan of North Carolina State University. Actually, I was thinking if we have some people that are coming in just for this session, maybe we should wait just a few minutes for them, and we'll get started right at 2:25. Okay, we can go ahead and get started.
Thanks so much for being here, everyone. We are going to jump right into our presentation, but first we'll introduce ourselves. Slide. My name is Amanda, and my pronouns are she, her. I work at the North Carolina State University Libraries, and I design instructional content and experiences, and I'm interested in digital humanities and collective spaces, which were some of the interests I brought to this project.
Hey everyone, I'm Cass. I use they, them, theirs pronouns. I've worked closely with Amanda on the instruction team. What it says here, using audio, video, graphic design to do some cool stuff.
Hey everyone, my name is Colin Keenan, also from the NC State Libraries. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a mixed reality developer, and I'm really interested in how technology can serve instructional and outreach mission rather than kind of vice versa.
All right, so we're all very familiar with this scenario, but let's imagine it again. It's roughly a year ago and campus has shut down, and it's becoming clear that we aren't coming back this semester. In this talk, we're going to explain how we boiled down various factors within a moment of tremendous transition to arrive at this core need here to create a physically distanced, co-present community experience for our campus audience. We'll walk you through the values that guided our work, the precedents for in-person library programming that we built this off of, and expand upon how some of those solutions and working relationships have led to and connected with other innovations with our digital offerings.
So once we had taken stock of that moment we were in a year ago that Cass pleased us back in, and from there identified the need that we wanted to address and meet for our library patrons and campus community, we began to think about the values that would inform and guide our work. These values and the ethos of those values were inspired by the work of colleagues within our own libraries, by the specific needs we had identified in this particular moment, and by mission statements from library associations. But how would we translate the practices guided by these values that we had already had precedent for in physical spaces into a new remote environment? Discovery, serendipity, and delight were some of the very first requirements that we wanted to meet for any project we developed. We wanted to facilitate not just instruction, but self-guided, interest-led discovery. We wanted to facilitate the experience of finding one breadcrumb of interest and learning, and having that breadcrumb serendipitously lead to another, and the feeling of delight that accompanies that experience. And finally, we wanted to create a platform where this experience of serendipity, delight, and discovery could also take place within a community of people who are diverse but like-motivated. We knew that part of creating that kind of community would be uplifting already existing work within a collective shared space. But when you have collective spaces where work is shared and people are exploring new connections, consent becomes an integral pillar to uphold a positive and equitable experience. So we knew that we would have to create a digital gathering space where people could choose what and how to share information, and where their interest would not feed an algorithm or generate self-perpetuating realities. Slide. So back to the moment we were in, when all of this big picture assessment was taking place. At this stage in our remote transition, we had not yet adapted to Zoom, and it felt both awkward and exhausting. We were thinking about ways to facilitate virtual connection that actually felt meaningful and maybe even fun. There was a collective acknowledgement amongst library colleagues that carrying forward services we used to offer is important for continuity. There was also an understanding that adapting those services in a one-to-one way was not necessarily ideal or possible, and that we were going to need to innovate and reinterpret many of our offerings. As Cass mentioned, the core of our need was to create a physically distanced, co-present experience for our campus audience. We hoped that in addition to meeting that core need, we could create something that would have lasting value by resulting in an artifact and by being a model for other iterations. We knew we wanted to showcase and engage community creativity in a meaningful way, as that was directly connected to our values. And so we began to think about some kind of multi-layered combination of shared synchronous experience and asynchronous production. Slide.
So as Kaz and Amanda made mention of, we were a lot less interested in reinventing the wheel and a lot more interested in combining multiple wheels to make a really delightful and useful bicycle. Some of the precedent experiences that we were looking to build out from within our organization, from within the NC State Libraries, included the really excellent zine making workshop and event series that had been put on by staff members in the past. And which had invited community creativity to come in and design in a shared way. You can also see a couple of digital artifacts on this page, and that's a good shorthand for where some work that I had been involved in the past was incorporated. We have a very experiential library and a very experiential approach to technology within our library. And as such, we've been offering programming in digital spaces for about 4 or 5 years by this point. On the left, you can see the result of a user-made workshop where we've made a digital facsimile of our beloved Dix Park from just down the road from campus. And in the top right corner there, you can see an augmented reality art exhibit that was created by a student and shared through the libraries in the past. These are just a couple of precedents and precedent programming avenues that we took into consideration as we tried to build something that reflected our ethos.
Yeah, so as, we'll jump into our solution now. So as Colin mentioned, with these precedents, we decided to remix the in-person zine workshops that Amanda and I had been working on and take them into the digital world. And so we created a collectivized zine around the theme of quarantine. People shared their reflections, musings, and art created during the beginnings of this really turbulent time. We ended up with over 40 submissions ranging from, as you can see on the screen, paintings, poetry, prose, video submissions, lots of pets. The zine lives on as a snapshot of the past summer, but we wanted to introduce a synchronous component to turn this artifact that we made separately into a shared experience.
Great. So one tool that we found very useful, and really it kind of continues this motif and this theme of not wanting to build entirely separate, isolated technology avenues and programming avenues, but instead build within a complex of tools that we were already utilizing. We were really delighted by the emergence and the improvement of a tool from Mozilla, the creator of a web browser I hope many of you are using, called Mozilla Hubs. This is a 100% open source digital meeting space that allows 3D avatars to interact and incorporates the ability to upload all sorts of different digital media, as well as incorporating video chat, which is totally optional, and voice chat, which is totally optional to accompany the 3D avatars. One reason that we were really keen on it is because of its open source nature and the fact that it utilizes a technology pipeline that's already present within many of our services by virtue of being built into the browser. And it creates online meeting spaces that can be either co-occupied synchronously or left online as asynchronous exhibits to be walked through alone. And we were able to build out a lot of user autonomy on which of those two functions users wanted to opt into. Its ability to incorporate various media was really advantageous to us because we wanted to give a very open breadth to what we could have users submit, and we were confident we could incorporate nearly all of that into the digital gallery we were making in 3 dimensions. So I'll show a little video of what this ended up looking like. You can see some really awesome work here, ranging from 3D models to real-time game engine simulations that we were able to embed within the room. So it looked like you were looking out a window and into a game, poetry on the walls, creative remixing of submissions that users had offered us early on. And we'll offer a link at the end of our presentation whereby you can, within your web browser with zero download, and that's a really important aspect as well, that no downloads scare off users often for good reason. The ability to access this through the web browser makes it a lot more accessible. But we will share that link so that you can walk through this gallery in the same way you see our camera walking through right now. I know Zoom doesn't always represent video in the best way. And so you can see that there's art across all the walls, even some audio playing and video playing on walls as well to incorporate different types of user submission.
I'm hoping that as you all were watching that come to life, that you're imagining some ways that something similar could play out in an instructional setting or within a community that you serve. Right now, we want to just pause and review some of the connections that this project that we worked on has connected to and moved alongside. We've seen the core values reflected in several projects, which makes a lot of sense since we were inspired by our own and other libraries in setting those values for ourselves. And because the project connected to salient values, the specific use case that we built has been scalable and iterative. And because we spent time building an explicit connection between different technologies that were pretty usable and offering services from those connections that we made between different tools, others have been able to use similar tools to meet the same ongoing need for a virtual gathering space, but have it easily adapted for different audiences and contexts. And we'll just go through 3 of those. Slide.
Yeah, so as you saw on the previous slide, one of the core values we discussed and brought to the table was a collective. So to facilitate a sum that amplifies its parts. It's a short slide. And one of those examples is the Energy Week zine. So we partnered with the NC State Sustainability Office and Arts NC State and used the same model for a digital collective zine. It was ready to go since we had already created this connection, and it took place during Energy Week. And so the theme was, what does energy mean to you? So it was the same idea of like having community curated themes and musings. And it was very nice to bring in outside collaborators that wanted to work with this model. This also allowed Colin to quickly build another virtual gallery using the same layout from the Corin zine. And so once again, we got to meet with each other in this space and experience the gallery opening. And the submitters got to see their art, so it was cool.
Another value was discovery. So how do we create a digital space where our users can discover new things from within their community that are led by their own interest, but which also go beyond that loop of sort of algorithm-driven discovery that happens in a lot of digital spaces? And how can we showcase existing work from within our community to facilitate this process? Slide. This was the motivating question behind a new web page created by a small team, including these presenters and other colleagues across several departments within the libraries. This web page, which is called Think and View, is a visual catalog of experiential content from the NC State University's libraries. Both library staff and library patrons have been producing a ton of visual and experiential content this past year. And this is a place where it can all live in an approachable and engaging way. It's now home to our daily Twitch stream where we host different kinds of interactive content, a student work showcase, and an interactive gallery of community work. Slide.
And finally, one of the last values that we want to really ruminate on is that idea of delight. One of my favorite things about the NC State Libraries is that within our mission statement document, one of the core values of our organization is delight. I think that's a really important aspect of what makes our libraries unique and what we like to amplify about the concept of libraries. One of the most delightful pieces of content to appear on the page that Amanda was just describing in the past year, in my opinion, is the Brickyard Broadcast, which really takes the ideas of 3D meeting space much more into a performance venue. This is a virtual performance space where an original composition by the acclaimed composer Elisa Bailawa was performed asynchronously and totally socially distant by 200 student and community musicians from across the NC State campus and the surrounding areas within Raleigh. This performance night and premiere night, it's an ongoing performance, accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, ongoing. And the performance loops every 20 minutes. We had a premiere night event that streamed out on that Think and View page and had over 700 concurrent viewers. And I think that idea of impact is something that's very interesting to judge for these 3D spaces. From all of the spaces that are use the Quarantine as its precedent, we've done 4 such 3D installations on the web. And those have over 4,100 unique visits and visit experiences whereby users have come in and used those spaces from over 2,200 unique devices. So we are having users come back and return to these spaces, but there's an increasing arc of discovery to them as time goes on.
So this here on our last slide is a selfie that we took with our avatars in the gallery. I'm not sure if that part was obvious in the video that you saw, but you actually can choose an avatar and zoom around and see one another. So that's Colin, Cass, and I. And so as a way to launch into discussion, I just want to wrap up on some of the reflections that we are bringing to the table now, a year after working on this project or beginning this project. First of all, I hope that even if making a new web page or creating a hub isn't something that you see as feasible now or in the near term within your own organization, that some of the other principles of collaboration and just repurposing existing content and instruction in new ways will be inspiring and seem possible. We certainly, in reflecting on this, have noticed how much value we gained through cross-departmental collaborations, something that wasn't always happening as frequently for us pre-pandemic. We all work in different areas of focus, and now increasingly with more aligned focuses, which has been really wonderful. We also have some bigger questions to ask moving forward. We began this project with a lot of optimism about a digital gathering space, and we still feel optimistic about such a space going forward. But in the year that has passed, we've come to bring an even more critical eye to some of the issues inherent in the digital spaces where we've been gathering primarily this past year. Those issues are things like surveillance capitalism, usability to different kinds of learners, and equity-related accessibility. We're expanding from our original need to look at a lot of other needs so that we can keep representing and sharing these spaces and thinking about greater inclusivity and equity. Since it seems like digital spaces aren't going anywhere, even once we can gather in person, bringing more scrutiny to them, the shortcomings and problems, I think, is a really important next step in making digital gathering spaces what we want them to be. So we'd like to open up to conversation about any aspect of this presentation, questions that are technical or theoretical, anything that you would like to share or ask. And thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you all so much for that presentation. We do have a little padding built in between sessions, so I'll let you go on for a little bit longer. I don't see any questions coming up right now, but I love the idea of the partnerships. And so many people, they see this and they think, wow, this is great, but how do I do this? And so I love that you're partnering with institutions, and you talked about that. Could you talk a little bit more about some of that partnering work that you did?
Sure, I can. So after the Porn Zine was released, Energy Week, the NC State Sustainability Office actually reached out to us to do a very similar thing. And so I was brought onto that team. And so it was, I guess it's just really cool that, they recognized what we had created and wanted to do it again. So yeah, I worked closely with those departments to create something new, and then a new zine. And then I handled it in a very similar way, accepting we accepted submissions through Google Forms. So it was super easy to just reset the Go link and have people submit there. So yeah, that's that collaboration, at least. I don't know if y'all wanted to share about the other two.
That's great. Well, I thank you so much and for presenting, and thank you to everyone who attended this session and the one before it. And we hope that you will continue to enjoy the conference as we wrap up here today. And take care, and thanks so much again.